No, you can't. You have to, because we have a live shot in the next minute. Yeah, so it needs to be done now, please. Thank you. Dealing with something else.
Oh, does Washington do it when I first called?
No, they didn't.
Something else. Okay.
Did you tell the station that live channel too? They said okay?
Well, they didn't really say much. The producers in there.
on his stereo.
I will. I love you. Yeah. Feeling nasty. Starting to move the truck around. All right.
Holy shit.
All right, I love you, Dad. All right, bye. I'm gonna go back out there and do Facebook Live because shit's just about to start falling apart. Roofs are about to come flying off. Picture keeps changing here. There we go. Just put my see how we're doing on windy.
See where we're at.
Oh, she's just about right on top of us.
Damn.
What time we got? 1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Yep, this is it, dude.
This is gonna be the worst of it right here, huh?
It's gonna be the worst of it. In fact, I'd like in a few minutes to get out and do some live shots from the safe, kind of the safe area here. All right?
Yeah.
But not right yet. Hey, man.
Yeah.
What do you think? I'm thinking we should try and wedge the truck. Take a look here, dude, real quick. And I think before this comes in, I think we should do it pretty quickly. I think we need to wedge the truck right in there. You understand what I'm saying?
Alright.
Just, would you help guide me?
Yeah.
Because feel this. It's gonna grab the front end of this thing and fucking whip it on us. So move that shit far back in the corner. I'm just gonna try and get it as far back there as I can. enough room to get past? Just enough? Okay. Fuck, dude.
1, 2, 1, 2. All right.
Switching over to hardwire. Let me know if you guys got me now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 20 miles south of Panama City. Max sustained 150. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We are just adjusting our audio here as well, so I'm going to keep talking. How fast is the storm moving? Do we have that? Is it still about 13 miles an hour or so? Or in case anyone knows. Okay, all right. Ready? Okay. My hat comes down too much. You just let me know. I can push it back up off my eyes a little bit. Two minutes to generic. 2 minutes to generic.
It's definitely wider. The lens is going to be incredibly close.
It's going to be, yeah, soaking lens.
That's pretty much all I can do, eh? Yeah, and that thing, we got to tie that back somehow.
Eyewall is nearly on shore. Copy.
Here, let me get in there.
Oh, look at that.
MacGyver.
Can we spare one of these seats?
1 minute to generic. 1 minute.
The best thing to do is to get the rope and just tie it back.
Great. Got it. Copy that. "30 seconds, final cue. Well, Hurricane Michael is expected to make landfall momentarily, very soon. The eyewall approaching Panama City. Conditions are continuing to worsen. This wind and rain is picking up, and officials are imploring people to hunker down and to stay off the roads.
This is the worst storm that the Florida Panhandle has seen in more than 100 years.
Hurricane Michael.
An island closer to Mexico Beach is where that outer eyewall, some of the most damaging winds set to make landfall imminently. This hurricane is about to make landfall, again, not far from where we are right now. I want to show you behind me some of the damage it's already done. You can see the trees here. One of them has already come down behind us. Most of them are bending back and forth in dramatic fashion, as you would expect to see with a hurricane bearing down on us. And the power lines, as you can see, are already coming down in the streets here behind me. And that is what they're really worried about with this hurricane. Just the sheer scope of these winds, 150 miles per hour. It's hard to wrap your head around this. They have buoys out in the water, the National Weather Service does, to sort of measure the wave size. At one point, they measured a wave up to 31 feet. and then it stopped delivering data. Sort of ominous message from the National Weather Service when the data went down. We just got an alert from the National Weather Service in Tallahassee, not far from here, an alert that we had never seen before from that particular station. They said the situation is about to get serious in Bay, Gulf, and Franklin counties. We're here in Bay County, and they said this is the first ever extreme wind warning that they've issued. That means wind gusts in excess of 130 miles per hour. Obviously, we've seen extreme wind gust warnings before, but never right here in this region. I do want to get to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z because she's on Mexico Beach, where I mentioned that outer band of the outer part of the eyewall just making landfall. And Ginger, we cannot underscore how significant the pressure is in this hurricane. It's dropping and has been dropping all morning long. Now lower than Katrina.
Yes, lower than Katrina, 919 millibars at the last hour. My ears have been popping for a half hour, as have the other people in this room with me. I'm not standing outside because I can't, and I won't, because it is just too dangerous. We have seen debris flying, pieces of homes, certainly huge. You can hear it. I mean, just take a listen to that incredible roar. And you know what? Fascinating. I just tasted salt from the water that came in from here. The ocean so violent, you can't even see it. It is about a block and a half from us. We did have a view of it, but now it's just a whitewash. The waves were getting so large that they were starting to overtake the dune that we had been standing on earlier for Good Morning America. Really, I have been in other storms, and I was covering Katrina, but obviously this now is the strongest as far as winds go this far north in the Gulf of Mexico since Camille, since 1969. Not a storm that a lot of people have any experience with. I am constantly trying to keep the cool. We are in a cement building. We are in the safest place we can possibly be at this point, but we are in that extreme wind warning with 130 mile per hour winds possible. And again, the debris is why I'm not standing outside, because we have seen it flying everywhere. Let me take you to the map, because if you haven't seen this image yet, you need to. Landfall is imminent somewhere between here and likely Tyndall Air Force Base. We will see that when it officially... Did you hear that too? The crashes are so ominous when you hear, you don't know what that is crashing through. But in that close-up eye on our graphic system, you can actually see the ocean below. See that water glistening there. That's that clear eye that is made for such a strong and impactful, now 150 mile per hour wind, likely making landfall as we speak. We'll get the official from the National Hurricane Center. But taking you to those extreme wind warning that includes Panama City, all the way through Apalachicola, over to about St. Mark's, it looks like. Or not St. Mark's, I'm sorry, down into Apalachicola. But as the wind keeps going to the northeast, we're not going to be the only ones dealing with hurricane-force winds. Places like Dothan, Alabama, Albany, Georgia, could see gusts upwards of 60 miles per hour. And there goes more. I don't know if you're hearing the crashing. Yeah. Yeah, maybe, no, we'll leave the door open. Brandon's asking if I want to shut the door. I think at this point we're going to start to wrap up. But don't forget that the storm surge on the back end of this, we've had east winds, George. East winds meaning offshore. The water has been pushing away from us. When this thing comes on the back side of it, we're not going to be done with it. We're going to see even more of that water pushing our way. We could see 9 to 13 feet across a large area of this panhandle of Florida. Such a vulnerable spot. Again, so many people. I'm hoping everyone is in their safe place. And just so everyone at home knows, if this gets too hairy, we actually have interior bedrooms and bathrooms. We have mattresses, and we'll be ready to put ourselves in the safest place possible. Just listen one more time, because I think it really is astounding. Of all the storms I've ever covered, this one will end up being the strongest, at least in my lifetime.
Ginger, those winds are as furious as any winds I've ever seen. I would advise you to close that door, but we are happy to be hearing just the roar of that. And remember, just a couple of hours ago on Good Morning America, you were on that beach, but now can't even get close to it. We do want to talk to Rob Marciano in Panama City Beach as well. Rob.
Hello, George. Easily the worst of the conditions that we've seen all morning long, as you can imagine, as this eye wall begins to approach Panama City Beach. We are just actually west of Panama City Beach, so we'll be getting that part of it. And right now, behind on this side of me is the hotel that is protecting us. Well built, very high, about 8 stories there, and the wind just humming right over the top of that. And also, ripping along the sides of it, and it's been doing some damage, ripping off parts of the side of the hotel. There's a gutter right there, a kind of a flimsy fence behind that crew stand where a television crew, they wisely abandoned that position. This is all being thrown around and ripped apart. We're seeing other hotels up and down this beach line where roof tiles are being strewn off. Now, out there, the surf, you get an idea of just how strong the winds are. The waves obviously crashing in. Those are 12, 15, maybe 18-foot waves crashing on the shore. But you can see the wind just ripping along the tops of those waves there. And it's going parallel to the beach, if not slightly offshore. So that, if anything, is helping our surge issue at least here because we're on the western flank of this. But on the eastern flank, closer to Ginger and over by Apalachicola, they're going to have that surge issue in a bad side. Thing is moving really rapidly. The good news with that is that we will only be in this situation for a good 5 or 6 hours. The bad news with that is that it will hold its structure and its strength well inland, meaning folks in southern Georgia are going to see a Cat 1 or a Category 2 storm as this historic hurricane now makes landfall. More debris. My head a little bit on a swivel here. We'll go out to the street in just a little bit, George, to show you what the windward side of this storm is doing and the kind of debris it's throwing around there. We haven't seen anything other than emergency vehicles, and we haven't seen any of those in the past hour. So everyone right now is sheltering in place as they should, as the eye wall of Hurricane Michael approaches.
Everybody's got to be inside. As you make your way over there, I want to bring in Sam Champion from Miami. And Sam, you know, we saw how furious those winds are right there. Earlier today, I was talking to Brock Long, the head of FEMA, and he said this is a hurricane of the worst kind. What did he mean by that?
Well, you know, when you get into this category, George, there are very few storms developed to be Cat 4. This is a strong Cat 4. Remember, if you're talking about winds about 150 miles an hour, just 156, you start to get to Cat 5. So very few storms get into this rarefied territory of being the worst storms in history, and this is one of them. And you'll remember that we were prepping people for a Cat 3 storm with this. And then even yesterday, when I started looking at the notes, I thought, you know what? There's really no reason this thing can't continue to strengthen. The Gulf has everything a storm needs to get stronger. There's no shear fighting this storm. There's no weather system fighting this storm. It's got warm water above 84 degrees right below it. The only thing that could influence this storm in any way is the shallowness of the water close to the coastline in the Gulf. And this storm is so strong already, George, it's barreling right through that. So this is going to be one of the worst storms, not only for this part of Florida in history, but destructive as well. Let's show you a little bit, George, about what's happening with the eye, the center of this storm. Now, I often call landfall on a storm when the eye wall itself makes connection, because that's what people feel. That's what, when people are hunkering down in their homes, they know when that eye moves on shore. The Hurricane Center calls the connection when the center, the lowest pressure of the storm, and that'll be right in there when it makes connection. So they'll say the official landfall of this storm is when that center of the storm moves on. But I'll tell you, George, what people are feeling right now, from where Ginger is in Mexico Beach all the way into Panama City, they're feeling the worst part of this storm, that eye wall. Now, go ahead, George.
Well, I was just going to say, Sam, why did this storm crop up so quickly?
George, this is kind of what happens with a Gulf or a Caribbean forming storm. When we have a storm that forms way off the coast of Mexico, off the coast of Africa, and we watch those things move across the Atlantic like we did with Florence, we have plenty of time to say, look, here's a storm. We have weeks, or we have days and almost a week to talk about that storm. This storm formed Saturday. It kind of spun up very quickly down in the warm waters, you know, south of Cuba, by the Yucatan Peninsula. And so we didn't have a lot of time to talk about the storm because that's when the storm developed. The Hurricane Center is looking at everything, and we've got Nadine out there in the Atlantic right now. We've got another one to talk about in the Atlantic. But when you're looking at this, George, it's only because we've got very quick time to develop, 2 or 3 days max before they make landfall.
Okay, Sam, stand by, because I want to go back to David Muir. You got something happening down there in Panama City, David?
Yeah, in fact, exactly what Sam just talked about. We are seeing the brunt of the most dangerous part of the storm begin to move in. And I want to underscore what we heard Sam just point out. You know, I was talking to the hurricane hunters who flew beside the storm and over the storm over the last 24 hours, and that was their main worry. Exactly what Sam said. in this hurricane, in its trip to get here, traveling over those warm waters of the Gulf, and no other steering mechanism to sort of stop it, to knock out some of that power. It had a clear run right for the Florida Panhandle. I want to show you something in between these bands, which are getting pretty heavy here, as you can probably see at home. A number of trees have now come down around us, and we've seen a couple of power lines come down, and you see the sort of the explosion, the transformer fire in the moment. They sound like many explosions throughout the neighborhood as the power now goes out. If you see over my shoulder here, you get an idea of just the sheer strength of the outer bands of this hurricane. And as you've been pointing out, we're dealing with a Category 4, 150 miles per hour. That's just a few miles per hour shorter than what you'd need for a Category 5. This is history here in this part of the Florida Panhandle. They have not encountered a hurricane like this in forever in this particular part of the Panhandle. They've dealt with Category 3s, but nothing like this. And in fact, we heard from the FEMA administrator this afternoon who talked about the construction, which of course is always a concern when these hurricanes arrive. He brought up the buildings, that many of the buildings that were built prior to 2001 are designed to withstand a Cat 3. He also pointed out that for the families who did not get out of here, did not heed the warning, and keep in mind with this hurricane, it's been on our radar for a couple of days now, but we certainly didn't have the amount of time that we had with Florence to prepare and get families out. But for the families who stayed, he said, time has clearly run out, and now the hurricane is here. He told them just a couple of hours ago to seek shelter, to get within a stairwell or within a hallway inside the building. And for viewers watching us right now, we always get the tweets, and I really appreciate them. I just want you to know that we're, regardless of the wind that you're seeing right here, we are covered in a concrete area here with concrete posts on either side of us to protect us. And I just want to let you know at home that we are protected in that way, and we'll certainly head indoors. A lot of families inside who've left their homes, who I've been talking with all morning long, and as they've been asking too. And you know, they have lived here for generations and have not seen something to this scope. One of the things that we heard from the administrator, Brock Long, with FEMA, and you saw him during Florence, you see him again now during Hurricane Michael, he told people to find a structure that can withstand 150-mile-per-hour winds. It's a tough thing to answer because they simply have not seen. I just want you to take a look. This is what it looks like as a Cat 4 moves in. Trees are coming down in front of us. Power lines have come down. We've seen, as I mentioned, those explosions right before our eyes. And again, these are just the outer bands. As Sam and Ginger were pointing out, the hurricane now coming ashore between where we are here in Panama City Beach, not far from where we are, between here and Vincent Island, and Mexico Beach is sort of the in-between point. And you heard from Ginger how she felt the pressure. Her ears have been popping all morning long, and there's a focus on the pressure, and it's significant. It is lower than what we saw in Katrina. It has been dropping steadily over the course of several hours this morning, and we've watched this intensify before it makes landfall. And I just want you to hear what it sounds like standing out here, just the sheer force of this. Listen to this. Extraordinary to witness firsthand, and one of the things I have to say that in being here for the last 24 hours, we did notice there were very few people left on the beach, very few people out, even in these final hours before the hurricane. An extremely good sign, given the fact that they did not have a lot of time to prepare for this one. A couple of key factors that are different about Hurricane Michael from Hurricane Florence and obviously Harvey, which is still so fresh in our memory, is that this hurricane is moving much more quickly. It's not going to come ashore and simply sit here and dump water like what we saw in Florence and what we saw, of course, in Harvey. This is going to move much more quickly. It doesn't mean it's any less destructive. In fact, the winds they are very concerned about. That's why there's states of emergency, not only here in Florida, but as you go through Alabama, through Georgia. An alert went out in Georgia not long ago, not about hundreds of trees coming down, but the possibility that they'll see thousands of trees come down, that there'll be power out not just for days, but for weeks to come. But just given the scope of what we're witnessing right here, I do want to go back to meteorologist Ginger Z. As I mentioned, she's on Mexico Beach between Panama City and Vincent Island. And Ginger, I know the outer bands were hitting you moments ago. I can't even explain how we've seen this pick up in just the last couple of minutes. I'm curious what you're seeing right now.
And that's how quickly it happens, David. We are in the eye wall, so we're on that right side, the dirty side. And George had asked me to not only shut the door, but look, we've had to step away from the door because debris is flying so close to our hotel. You see that right there. You see that, and we have a wind gust. Max is talking to me saying there's 129-mile-per-hour wind gust recorded, but our window here is a hurricane-proof glass door, and it has been bowing, and so we wanted to step away from that. It looks so much like the hurricane I always describe to people, and that is a washing machine. You have all of this water, you have all of this wind, and you can't see anything. Just 20 minutes ago, I was able to see the homes right across. I have no idea if they are there still. I don't know what type of damage has been done. We keep hearing crashes and bangs, and that means that debris is flying off, rolling down the roads here, and hitting into the building. The other thing that I just started to feel, and we're on, just to give you an idea, we're on stilts in a cement building on the second floor, which is actually like the third floor. And I'm starting to feel just a little bit of tremor. That is the wind being that ferocious and almost like a little bump that is moving the entire building. Again, I feel very safe within this structure specifically. We actually have interior rooms, and I can show you it's not just this room, but there's a bathroom, and I know we're stopped up right there. But the bathroom, we put a mattress in because that's a last resort. That's what we do. And everything's kind of going wild here.
Ginger?
Oh, and there's some debris that just came up on our deck. You can see right there. Yes, go ahead, George.
Yeah, as you were hunkering down this morning, has the rest of the neighborhood evacuated?
A lot of people left. Oh, you're hearing that. The debris hit the windows here. I'm sorry. Now you're kind of seeing that washing machine. You guys could step away there too, Brandon and Tim. And yes, a lot of people have left, but the people that did end up staying, actually the woman who's in the building with us here, Kimberly, has a home that's right on the water, and she was so scared that that wasn't going to be there anymore, and I think it was a very good move for her not only to move inland a little bit, but into a cement structure, because that's really the only way to survive in these types of things. Because when you have a Category 4, and I know Sam was mentioning this, we're talking about 150-mile-per-hour winds that can make even well-built structures, you can't occupy them. They can take the roof, they can take the walls, and the type of damage, and here goes the warnings. For some reason, our smoke alarm keeps going off. We think maybe because of steam that is building up inside of here.
How long will the winds of this intensity last right where you are?
And that's a great question, because that's people who are holding on and saying, how long is this going to last for? I think we're going to end up, especially here in Mexico City, because I don't think we're going to get the eye. I think we're going to be right on the right side of it for the next hour, hour and a half or so of this intensity. That is where you get the damage. If the first gust of 120 doesn't do it, the next gust of 130 can do it. And you've got time to do it. Fortunately, as David was mentioning, this thing is slicing in comparison to a lot of the other hurricanes that we've dealt with recently. So moving at 14 miles per hour, that's going to help us because it will move on. The other thing that I mentioned earlier that I am really more concerned about is the water on the backside of this, the surge that could still come. It's not just surge on the front, it's surge overall. And I don't know if you can see here, we have the doors shut, water's bubbling up from outside, just from the rain alone. That is not from surge or anything. That's just from rain alone kind of entering this condo and taking over the floors. So that's the very minimal damage that we'll be seeing here. The power lines are just dancing outside of there. Not something that you'd want to be a part of. And so much, doesn't it look like a car wash? That's what it looks like. It looks like we're inside of a car wash that has 129 mile per hour winds.
Yeah, we can tell. I can't imagine what it's like just to be a few feet from it right there, Ginger. Well, now I want to pull away and give people a sense of the scale of this storm. Look at a shot of the storm of Hurricane Michael from space right there. And you can see, and Ginger was talking about this earlier, that well-formed eye there. President Trump calling this a monster storm as well earlier today. Just a massive storm moving so quickly across Florida and into Georgia. Want to go back on the ground now to WPLG's Terrell Forney in Apalachicola.
George, we are seeing the devastating impact that Hurricane Michael is having in areas along the Florida Panhandle. Take a look behind me. You can see all of that driving rain. Look at those palm trees. They are no match to all of the wind that is pushing in from the Gulf. This has been the scene here in Apalachicola throughout the entire day. What we've noticed is a change in the wind. It was gusty earlier in the day, but these strong winds are now sustained. They are not giving up as Hurricane Michael inches near to this area. We can also tell you that we've driven around this area along the Apalachicola River, and that river has already spilled its banks. There is water overflowing into a park and into a road. Storm surge was a big threat in this community. Forecasters were saying they were expecting between 9 and 12 feet of storm surge, a deadly number for any community, especially when you consider that many of the structures in this area are one-story structures. Take a look over there. You can see a huge tree that is down. It has fallen on a fence next to a home. This is the situation that we have seen driving the roads through Apalachicola as well. We also know that there are a number of down power lines. Power has been out for a number of hours here as this storm inches near this community. George?
It is closing in. Terrell, thanks very much. I want to go to Washington now. Kenneth Moten at FEMA headquarters, where they have been going around the clock as it preparing for this storm. And Kenneth, we already heard Brock Long in the briefings earlier today saying his biggest concern is people didn't have enough time to get out. Not enough people got out.
And he called it the worst type of storm, unprecedented. Words you don't want to hear from someone in that post, George. But this is a massive federal response. As you just mentioned, FEMA Administrator Brock Long, he was at the White House updating President Trump. He just returned here to FEMA headquarters to the Nerve Center for this massive federal response to hold an interagency call with local and state officials in the Southeast. As you see, rows and rows of people behind me, they are coordinating this federal effort. FEMA says it has thousands of people on the ground in the Southeast, 3,000 people to be exact, so that they can respond and mobilize quickly to those areas hit by this storm. Now, as you know, FEMA says it is monitoring the situation. Other headlines from them, George, the focus post-storm will be on getting those roads open to get those first responders in after the storm. And due to down trees and down power lines, the agency is preparing for electricity to really be out for weeks. FEMA is also worried about those buildings in Florida that were built before 2001, George, that apparently do not have the same codes, building codes, construction codes. And what we understand is that those built before 2001 really likely won't be able to withstand a Category 3 storm, and we know that we're dealing with a Cat 4 here. Last night, I should also tell you, George, 4,000 people entered 70 Red Cross shelters across the Panhandle of Florida and Alabama. FEMA is also keeping close watch on Georgia, where hurricane-force winds are expected to bring trees down, power out, widespread structural damage, and the threat of tornadoes along the track of Michael. And then there's that heavy rain threat in the Carolinas, George, because we know that those states are still dealing with the impacts of Florence.
Yeah, boy, they sure are, Kenneth. Thanks very much. Actually, want to go to Eva Pilgrim. She is in South Carolina right now, and of course hit so hard by Hurricane Florence. Eva, the weather hasn't quite come in yet, but already getting a little wet.
Yeah, we're already getting rain. This is actually a different system, and this is part of the problem that we're looking at here. This area, the Carolinas, has seen so much rain. First from Florence, that slow-moving hurricane that just dumped and dumped across the Carolinas, and then the rain that has just naturally come here as it does this time of year through this season. And so the ground here is already inundated with rain. They're waiting to see how this storm moves through, to see how much rain falls into this area that already has seen the ground so wet. And the governor here in South Carolina, they actually never lifted their state of emergency after Hurricane Florence. They've actually just extended it to deal with Hurricane Michael that is now heading this way. George?
Okay, Eva, thanks very much. I want to go to Victor Akendo in Tallahassee. They are getting ready.
Yes, they are, George. Hurricane Michael is headed right this way. Right now, we're starting to feel those outer bands. The rain here has been consistent, and now those gusts of wind are only getting stronger. We just heard from county officials. They say that Tallahassee has not seen a storm like this in more than a century. They say that if you have not evacuated, if you have not left your home, the time for that has passed. You need to seek shelter immediately. West Tallahassee is expected to get the worst of it here. Florida's capital is beautiful, but it is covered with trees. You've got a lot of big oak oak trees as well. Just take a look at that big one right over there. You got the Spanish moss hanging right down from it. That's already littering a lot of the streets here in Tallahassee. The big concern all along for folks here, those trees coming down as Hurricane Michael marches through here, and power outages. We could be looking at projectiles, a lot of debris just covering the roads. So that's going to mean road blockages, power outages for some time to come. Now, they did pre-position a bunch of crews in this area, more than 1,000 utility workers already here in place. You've got road clearing crews and power crews as well. But here's the thing. They won't be able to get out there and do their work once the winds reach more than 35 miles per hour. We're expecting about 5 to 8 inches of rain here in Tallahassee. We could see some tornadoes as well. So just to reiterate from county officials, if you have not left your home, now is not the time to do so. Stay off the roads and seek shelter immediately.
George, hunkered down at this point. Okay, Victor, thanks very much. Also want to go to Maggie Rulli. It is hitting hard now in Panama City Beach.
George, just like a switch flipped, all of a sudden this hurricane has come on hard and fast. We have been out here since 3 a.m. and back then there was hardly any wind, hardly any rain. And now about an hour ago, the winds have picked up, the rains have picked up. We actually had to come inside our hotel just a little bit because it was no longer safe for us outside. A huge sign at the gas station just next door flew off, ramming down the street. So we've taken safety a bit inside, but we're expecting things to only get worse. These winds to only keep increasing here for us here in Panama City Beach.
Okay, Maggie, and David Muir back in Panama City as well, where it seems to have calmed down, or you're inside at this point.
Yeah, we're inside, just inside where we are staying inside this hotel I mentioned you earlier. Obviously, we make sure that the hotels that we do stay at have reinforced walls. Give you an idea, the fire alarm is now going off in the building. I'm not sure if you can hear. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but you can see all the families who are gathered here. These are families who heeded the warning to leave their homes, come to this hotel, and to ride out this hurricane, this Category 4 hurricane that's now hitting. They have wind gusts 119 miles per hour right here in Panama City. I'm not going to go back outside for obvious reasons, but Dale, if you could just show folks at home what it looks like as the Category 4 barrels through the eyewall coming ashore, the Florida Panhandle right now. Obviously just an extraordinary thing to witness, the power of these hurricanes and the fact that this one is really the size and scope of nothing they've ever seen before in this part of the Florida Panhandle as it whips by. Again, that's the entrance to the hotel that we're staying in. And when we were outside, we were protected somewhat by giant cement walls and U-Haul trucks and vans that are parked outside to barricade the area, and yet you're still seeing that through the front door of the hotel. You're hearing the alarms go off inside the hotel. The power went out some time ago. We actually saw the transformer explosion just down the street, George. But this is just really obviously an awesome sight to see, but it illustrates the real danger that authorities here have been talking about for the last 24 hours and telling people to get out, to try to seek shelter, to come to one of these hotels, or to go further inland. This is what all of these families who are standing behind the camera are watching along with us here this afternoon unfold here. The only blessing, if there is one, with a hurricane this large is that, as you have been pointing out with Sam, that it is moving fairly quickly, moving much more quickly than what we saw in Florence, and certainly in Harvey, where those came ashore and then they just sat there and they dumped water. And look at the scope of the water that you see over my shoulder here. And yet this hurricane is moving more quickly than those previous hurricanes that we've reported on. It's somewhat remarkable that you have states of emergency in several states already. They're now preparing for the possibility that it'll be at hurricane strength when it travels through Georgia and beyond. And Ginger, we've now moved inside just as you did earlier. You got the early brunt of this, but we're now seeing the sheer force as this makes its way through Panama City. And the last wind gust that I saw reported, Ginger, was 119 miles per hour right here in Panama City.
And David, no matter where you are in the storm, I just saw something I have never seen in real life. I've seen it on video, and I have seen it in a 3D graphic that we made to describe storm surge. I saw an entire home taken off of its foundation and rolled down the street. That is the type of storm surge we're talking about right here in Mexico City at this moment. You can't see it, but we could just start to make out, and I saw the roof on its side rolling down the street, and that was one of the structures that I had showed you earlier. I can't see if any of the others have made it. The water is still at least 10 feet below us, but remember I told you we're on a 3rd floor. We have rooms 4th and 5th, so we're able to go up if we needed to. But I'm going to tell you right now, anything that was on this coast within 20 minutes just now is gone, is going to be washed away. It is going to be one of those concrete slab situations when this all calms down. My heart is racing. I have never, George, seen something like an entire home, a well-built home, rolling down the street, except for we made this 3D graphic so that we could explain to people after Sandy happened what storm surge really does to a structure, what it can do to your home, and how quickly it can come in. We just watched that happen in real time. And I'll tell you right now, it makes you shake.
I can hear it in your voice. It is just staggering, staggering, Ginger. And we're glad that all of you are at least a little bit higher up. And if at any moment it comes time for you to go, you've got to get fully inside. Want to
we feel still very good.
Want to bring in Congressman Neil Dunn now. He represents this district from Central Panhandle through Tallahassee and Panama City. Boy, you're going to have a lot of work ahead of you, Congressman.
Yeah, this is an unprecedented storm in Florida history. We've never seen anything like it. It's huge. It's, as you said, a Category 4, and the storm surge is literally unprecedented.
And Congressman, did you have the sense that the people, your constituents, had heeded the warnings and had evacuated in time?
I wish I could tell you that I felt comfortable about that. I think that we have had a shortage of evacuations. Our shelters hit a certain amount of fullness. We have 4 shelters open, and people in them, 2 or 3 are full, but the other one is not. Honestly, there's going to be a lot of damage. It's hard to predict because it's just that we don't have a model for it. I've spent most of the morning working with FEMA and other agencies to plan and prepare for pre- and post-disaster support, supplies, people, services. We're working with the utilities, the first responders, the hospital, transportation, the police.
Yeah,
now the storm is upon us, and everybody has to shelter in place and take no chances, no risks. Just be safe, be resilient, take care of your family and your neighbors.
Are you down there now, or are you in Washington?
No, I'm in Bay County right now. I'm in the Emergency Operations Center. We've lost power and our internet. We're on generators.
And that is going to be the #1 issue going forward as you start the cleanup. You're going to have to bring in power generators from all across the country.
Fortunately, we've seen some really good responses to hurricanes in the last couple of years. Florida's stood some very robust recovery from natural disasters programs, and those were all dress rehearsals for this one.
And we can see and we can feel the power right now. Congressman, thanks very much. I want to go to Washington now. Tom Bossert, President Trump's former Homeland Security Director. Tom, you were on point, I think, for Irma and Hurricane Harvey back in 2017. This one seems to be hitting just even harder.
Yeah, George, thanks. I'm really worried at this point. I was also a FEMA employee, believe it or not, deployed into Florida in field operations for Hurricane Ivan in 2004. It hit the same or roughly the same area of the Panhandle, and we had a little bit more time. That was the 4th hurricane at the end of a 6-week period of time in which we had the entire state evacuated, unfortunately, 3 times in a row. And so people had a lot of heightened awareness. I look at this now, and I know we've all reported it, and what we're doing here today is extremely important here, providing good information to people to allow them to make good decisions. But I'm worried that the evacuation rates weren't high enough. I'm worried that we didn't have enough time to prepare adequately as a community from the local and state levels. And I'm worried and reminded to be a little bit somber at this point. Unfortunately, history tells me that we'll see some death as a result of this storm.
Tom, what is the key to getting those evacuation rates up. Was this simply a factor of speed here?
Yeah, it's a little bit of speed. It's a little bit of, time to act, right? At some point, some procedures take a little bit longer than you have, and so you have to make trade-off decisions. It's mostly about speed and time, but it's also messaging. You know, I think a lot of what we did as we saw this crop up was understandably start reporting on Florida, but the people of Georgia didn't necessarily get all the attention that they're now getting, but they're going to see hurricane force winds and rain.
Take us behind the
surge,
scenes.
though, George, that's going to leave behind damage that's going to last for years.
Take us behind the scenes now. Of course, you're not there right now, but you've been in situations like this, behind the scenes in the White House, in FEMA right now. What's happening?
Yeah, I've spoken to Administrator Long and his senior team today and leading up to it this week. I have a pretty good sense of what's happening. People are mobilized. The entire workforce is shifting all over the country to bring resources, human resources, some of whom are tired, into this region, into this effort. People are getting into their battle rhythm of 24-hour operations, 12-hour shifts, and operation cycles and periods where they do planning and so forth. But right now, as we sit here, it's a messaging game and a little bit of a waiting game. Everything that we could do is pretty much done, and now we have to wait to kind of let the dust settle and get in as quickly as possible.
Can't go in until the storm passes. Okay, Tom, thanks very much. I want to go back to Sam Champion in Miami. And Sam, what should people who are in the middle of this right now caught, what should they be doing?
Hey, George, we want to get people ready. I do have a headline for you right now, and this is very important information just came in. The center of this storm did make landfall near Mexico Beach, 155-mile-per-hour winds with this storm. Now, remember, a Category 5 is 156. So we are at the top level of a Cat 4. The Hurricane Center will go back and look at all of the gauges, look at all of the readings to see whether this was indeed a Cat 4 or Cat 5 at landfall. But this is an historic event in this location and for the coast of the U.S. This is rarefied territory for a storm to become this big, this strong, and make landfall anywhere in the United States.
That is a headline right there.
George,
the landfall. Wait, before you go there, because I want to go back to Ginger right now, because she's on the scene where Michael just made landfall. Ginger. I think we may have lost Ginger. David Muir, are you there?
I am here. I am here, and of course we all are thinking about Ginger right now since she is in precisely the location where this hurricane just made landfall, and I'm sure we will go back to her as soon as we can for folks at home who are watching and obviously thinking about her as we all are, and our team right there. Looking out this window right here, this is the hotel we're in Panama City. We are not far from where Ginger is. Winds are now gusting here at 129 miles per hour. The SUVs that you could sort of see through that front door, we're not standing out there because there are significant pieces of debris and parts of buildings now ripping off of the building and flying through the air. So we've stepped inside for obvious reasons. But those SUVs were literally lifting somewhat right out of the air. You can see the front end of that SUV on the left just bobbing in the wind as huge pieces of rooftops literally fly past the front window. You can hear the alarms going off in the background here. And Dale, I want to show folks at home these windows on the right-hand side. When you talk about construction, and obviously the codes have changed as we've seen the ferocity of these hurricanes through the years, but this window is an example of testing storm-proof windows. The management here at the hotel told us that this was up to code, but you can see the water coming right through the window, and you can see the window sort of buckling in the wind. It's a real test of infrastructure all throughout Florida's Panhandle. And down on the ground here, Dale, you can see these are parts of the building, the cement that's come off the side of the building. You see that there on the floor. All of this as we learned that the radar in Tallahassee has now come offline, and we're not getting any more weather information. That's one location where it's simply been overwhelmed by the weather. I don't want people to be alarmed by that fire alarm. It's simply a signal that the power has gone out inside the hotel where so many of the families here in this community have come to seek shelter, as we report here too. I just want you to hear the wind right outside this doorway. Just take a listen to this. We knew knew this was going to be a powerful hurricane as we watched it intensify over the last 48 hours from a Cat 3, then to a Cat 4. And as we just heard from Sam Champion, when it made landfall, and of course they will go back and they will study this, it made landfall 1 mile per hour less than a Category 5 hurricane. The fact that it was a Category 4 already made history here, but this notion that it was almost as powerful as a Cat 5 is simply stunning here. I want to get back to meteorologist Rob Marciano, who's also down here, Rob. And as we await to hear from Ginger, just describe for us, if you will, what you're seeing right now.
We're just west of your position, a little closer to the beach. We were just on the beach, and we said we would take you to the other side of the street, the windward side, if you will, as this storm now makes landfall and the winds begin to shift. We are in about on the second floor of a parking structure, an open-air stairwell, so you can get a sense of just how ferocious these winds are. Looking down the parking lots here off the main strip, and the main strip, the two-lane highway there, that is all but desolate as debris continues to swirl past us. We can hear that roar that David mentioned, whistling through parts of this parking structure. But you also hear, and then see from time to time, shingles and sheet metal being ripped off different structures. Obviously, the structures that are quite made as well, they're the ones most susceptible. Well, we've seen everybody take a hit, every building here take a hit of some sort.
Rob, thank you. We are in our same location, and I've got to tell you, a significant scare for the families who are inside this hotel with us. As you're looking out through the window, you can see the roof of the hotel that we had been standing out there. That was the shelter for a Category 4 hurricane. That has now come down on those SUVs that I was just telling you about earlier. Listen, the wind is picking up so much. We're gonna take a break. Send it back to you, George. I want to make sure everybody's safe. We'll talk to you shortly.
Those winds so fierce right now. And Sam Champion back in Miami, we're seeing the power, the destructive power of those winds right now. So intense.
George, we're all watching something together that very few of us get a chance to see, and I've been doing this for more than 30, 35 years. But a daytime hit of a hurricane that's a high 4, near a 5, moving through, this gives people a chance to see exactly how powerful this kind of storm is, and our crews have done everything right. We've put people in safe positions, but still have cameras so you can see the damage. The one thing, George, I want to remind people is that now that we have the eye, the center of this storm moving on shore, the storm will not get stronger, but it will stay this strength for a few hours longer as it slowly weakens. So I want to talk to people who are inland, away from the coast right now, and I mean Tallahassee into South Georgia, that southeastern corner of Alabama. All of you, I need you to kind of pay attention to what we're going to tell you right now, because as this storm now moves away and you're away from the flooding, if you have no connection with this storm surge and you're far enough inland, then what I need you to do, if you're with your family and you have information about what's going on, when this wind picks up like this and gets this strong, we will have 90 to 110 mile per hour winds well inland, in Tallahassee, also in Georgia, and that little corner of Alabama. So take your family into an interior hallway, drag every mattress that you have that you can get your hands on, and take it with you. Bring all your supplies with you. If you have an interior bathroom that has no windows, if you have an interior walk-in closet, walls are your friend against wind, tight walls. So every corner makes the building stronger. And the reason we like bathrooms is the plumbing running through those 2x4s within the wall actually helps make that wall stronger, and you can use the tub to get in and pull a mattress over you, much like you would a tornado, to protect yourself from debris, because I've been in these buildings when they fall apart like this, when the constant wind of a Category 4 or 5 hurricane tears them apart, and there will be flying debris. There'll be glass, there'll be insulation, there'll be wood, there'll be nails in that wood, all of it kind of moving through. So you want to put yourself in your home, an interior hallway, that walk-in closet, that bathroom, put everybody in with all your supplies, and stay for the duration. And this storm will be with you from 6 to 10 hours.
And Sam, I should say, that's exactly what Ginger has done. You know, we went to Ginger a few minutes ago, and we had lost her, and we couldn't hear from her. But we have now heard from her. Even though she's lost in her crew, they've lost the ability to broadcast. But as she's telling us now, she is safe. Wanted to make sure everybody knew that as well. And Sam, you're giving good information to the people who are in the path of the storm right now. As we see that map right there, it's going to be several intense hours ahead for everybody in the path of Hurricane Michael, because it's, as you were saying, it's going to kind of keep its structure as it moves quickly.
Yeah, this storm was very powerful, and it was kind of operating on its own. It didn't need to feed on the shallow waters of the Gulf. When you have a system that's a 4 or a 5, it just spins on its own, and it takes a long time to unwind it. So we will have this 3-4 in inland areas of the Florida Panhandle now. So Tallahassee and cities like that will be seeing exactly what we have with the winds. They just won't be facing a lot of the storm surge, and Georgia needs to know that too. But this storm is very different from the storm that we just broadcast a few weeks ago in Florence, when we're talking about it being a wet storm and a flooding storm. Once we get past that impact of the water up against the shoreline, we're talking about this storm being a damaging windstorm. So you really have to put yourself in your home and in any building you're in a secure location. One thing I want to tell you about hurricane-proof glass. The glass itself, that pane of glass, you can take a baseball bat and you can hammer it. It will not shatter to about 130+ mile-per-hour winds. But what seals the window to the building is not hurricane-proof, and those windows can often come out. So I don't want you to have the safety that if you're standing by hurricane glass watching this, you can watch it. George, you can't.
No, you cannot. Good counsel there, Sam. Thank you. I want to go back to Rob Marciano on Panama City Beach as we see so much debris being thrown around by those winds. Rob.
George? Hi, guys. Sorry about that, George. My earpiece getting filled with water, as you can imagine. The amount of rain now coming out of these clouds and blowing sideways, slapping me in the face, and just filling my ear canal with water. We're on the other side of this parking structure on the ground level, obviously. Look at that. Someone commuted to work on a bike, and they may be one of the folks at our hotel who are not going anywhere anytime too soon. Wanted to give you this vantage point. And again, we're somewhat protected by this structure here, so the wind's not nearly as ferocious as they would be if I were to step out in a more precarious position, about 30 feet or 50 feet that way. Every once in a while, we get these puffs. And I think Sam mentioned it. Along this eyewall, there are little vortices as it wobbles inland that have these puffs, if you want to call it, euphemism, that are really intense. It can easily knock you down. Those palm trees, check it out, how they are bending in this breeze of full-on hurricane strength. They are not coming down. There's a reason that palm trees are in the tropics, because they can take this wind. But when this storm gets a little further inland, Tallahassee or Neck Point, they got some tucked trees that are tall, pine trees as well. And they're going to come down. So we've got that 1-2 punch happening with this. But this, I've been in the western eyewall of a couple of storms, one actually notable. Hurricane Ivan back in 2004 also came in this area, a little bit farther to our west. And this side of the eyewall, I can assure you, is not any more fun than the other side. It is brutal here, and we're in this for another good couple of hours, George, and then the wind shifts, and we've got a whole other set of issues which we'll bring it to you live. And daylight, as Sam mentioned, it's an unusual event that you, the viewer at home, get to witness the power of Mother Nature firsthand.
George is coming in so strong, so fierce. I want to go now to Ken Graham, the director of the National Hurricane Center. And Ken, what is the most important thing you want people to know about this hurricane right now?
Yeah, we're really worried about, of course, the wind that you're seeing, some of the images from everybody. This is intense wind. I mean, landfall at 155 miles an hour, so structural damage, trees down, power outages, and that's just part of it. I mean, we're looking at some of the readings here at Panama City, already gusting to 129 miles an hour. Now, some of this could be well away, so once you start making landfall, even these rain bands away from the center of the storm could start having hurricane force winds. So this isn't just coastal, this is going to stretch pretty far inland.
And Ken, talk about the path that we're going to see over the next several hours and what could happen to the hurricane.
And look at this. So we do expect some weakening once you make landfall, so you start to see that. But here's the issue. When you come ashore that strong, you know, a Category 4, 155 miles an hour, we still are forecasting to still be a hurricane on the Alabama-Georgia state line, a tropical storm, even tomorrow, looking at the Georgia-South Carolina line. So this isn't just coastal here. Catastrophic damage right along the coast. But you'll start seeing the rainfall and gusty winds well into Georgia and the Carolinas. You can still see some power outages in those areas.
And Ken, we heard Ginger say this before. This is the strongest storm to hit the United States since Camille back in 1969.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I looked at some of the stats, and here's an interesting one, too. We got statistics going back to 1851 on these hurricanes, and this one here is the first Cat 4 in the Florida Panhandle, so historic in that regard. The other one, 919 millibars, makes it the top 3 or 4 lowest pressures of U.S. landfalling hurricanes as well. So, you know, a very strong system, catastrophic damage associated with the storm surge, the rain, and also the wind.
My goodness. Okay, Ken Graham, thanks very much. Thanks for your time. I want to go back to Maggie Rulli in Panama City Beach. Maggie.
George, not sure if you can hear that behind me. The whistling and the wind just continues to intensify. And the biggest change I've noticed about in the past half hour is just this wind you see is now constant. There is no break in these wind gusts, and they keep getting stronger and stronger. We were out there not too long ago, and I've had to keep moving further inside under the hotel awning just to stay safe. And it's a good thing we did. The second we moved inside, a huge sign from down the street ripped off its foundation, came barreling down just behind us. So we're staying more inside for now. And again, the biggest change is just these winds are intense, they're constant, and you can hear them whipping past your ears nonstop, George.
And Maggie, you've been there for several hours this morning. When did people start to move off the streets, and when did you really have the feel that everybody was hunkered down inside?
You know, I have to say, at first there was some draw to be outside, the anticipation. We were out here, like I said, since 3 a.m. this morning when it was still relatively quiet, and that's when you saw a lot more people, especially media, outside walking around, taking videos. But just about an hour and a half ago is when things really started to get intense, and I think people realized this is the time to take this storm seriously. The governor's been urging us. It's a strong Category 4, pushing 150 miles per hour, so this is not something to mess around with. And once we started seeing and hearing this wind whip up and seeing that debris, that's when everyone really pushed inside and started to take shelter.
Okay, Maggie, thanks very much. I want to go back to Sam Champion right now. And Sam, you know, boy, as we see those trees swaying in the wind, this hurricane hitting in the same week we learned from the United Nations that we're reaching an actual crisis point in the idea of climate change. Talk about what we know and what we don't know about the impact of climate change on intense weather events like this hurricane.
So, George, you know, when we get down to what we do know and what we believe and what we don't know, I would put that in 3 separate categories, because what we know has been proven that we know that in increased levels of carbon in the atmosphere has certainly done a lot to put more energy in the atmosphere, certainly done a lot to put more water in our oceans, and so that, we believe, will make the storms a little bit stronger. But in the next 2 categories of what we believe and what we don't know, it comes down to how many hands we have on deck for science. We have to be able to, and there are lots of scientists who will tell you they will point to these stronger storms as being contributed by climate change, to being stronger because of climate change. But we really need to put hands on deck to be able to prove that the warmer waters of the ocean, by the way, this storm was moving through waters in the Gulf that were 2 to 4 degrees warmer than normal for this time of year. So when you talk about warmer water making a difference on stronger hurricanes, this is the kind of thing we have to put together and show to people, you know, and George, it's just one of those things where we know it, we believe it, we just have to have the science and the proof to back it up and show people. George, one of the things that the Hurricane Center just did was talk about the inland path of this storm, and while we have everybody's attention because we have those incredible images of this thing making landfall, I wanted to talk about I wanted to go one step further than Georgia into Carolinas, if that's okay with you guys, if you have time for that. So we noticed by the time we get to Dothan, Alabama and Albany, Georgia, we've got a Category 2 hurricane inland. Category 2 hurricane. This is going to be disastrous damage for South Georgia. Then the other thing, we're going to watch that cruise through Georgia and get into South Carolina. And at that point, we have about 45-mile-per-hour winds with the center of this storm. It's a tropical storm, an inland tropical storm in South Carolina and North Carolina, dumping 6 to 10 inches of rain in the same areas that flooded with Florence. And I wanted to give those people a heads up on that, George, happening Thursday into Friday for them.
Yeah, this storm is not nearly done. Okay, Sam, thanks very much. I want to go back to David Muir in Panama City Beach, where we've already seen so much destruction, David.
Yeah, just extraordinary, George, to put this in perspective. As you've been likely saying, we were in sort of a stairwell here, a brick fortified stairwell with so many of the families that I showed you earlier. But then to emerge and be able to see the email again, third strongest hurricane to hit the U.S., not since Hurricane Camille in 1969. Everybody here on the crew, everybody is safe. I just wanted to share that with you, but I also wanted to give you an idea. This is what we had showed you earlier. The front end of the hotel coming straight down. That was where, obviously, we had been reporting earlier in the special, and you can see that roof down on a number of cars that were out there. Those were some of the SUVs that were parked there on purpose so that it would sort of protect the team as we were reporting early on. But you could feel this, George, as the hurricane grew closer, and you can actually still see through the window over there just the ferocity.
And David, the families that you're hunkered down with,
water that is whipping by.
The families you're hunkered down with, do they have any idea yet what's happened to their homes, or is it way too early to know?
Yeah, I think it's just absolutely impossible. In fact, when we were in the hallway with many of them, we couldn't even get out on our cell phones. It just gives you an idea of, when we're in the middle of these natural disasters, the cell service immediately goes out because everybody is competing for what little cell power there remains. Actually, we're just going to back up a little bit from this door. You can actually sense when the pressure changes inside the hotel. You can see it in the rattling glass, but you can actually feel it and you can hear it too, George. The wind. It's just incredible, and I see those outer windows that we were told were up to code. They're actually buckling somewhat, and we'll have to see if they're able to withstand this hurricane before Michael's actually done passing through. I should tell you, George, you did ask about the families. So many of them, when they saw us back away and move into the stairwell, they too went into hallways on the interior part of the hotel. A lot of them are in the hallways here, and which is the smart thing to do. They have been following the advice of people here in the hotel and managers, and when they were told to seek safety in the hallways, they did. And we should mention that this morning, with just a few hours left, we heard from the administrator at FEMA, the head of FEMA, saying that the time to leave was over. We heard from Rick Scott, who said this hurricane can kill, and in fact, we know it already did long before it made landfall here in the U.S. It was responsible for a dozen or more deaths on its way here. So let's just hope with what we have witnessed here today, which is, quite frankly, and I've covered many of these hurricanes, something I haven't seen before.
And David, you could say we know now this is just the beginning. The cleanup effort here is going to be massive. It's going to take days and weeks.
Oh, there's no question. Even when we were still outside, George, to see the number of trees that came down within the first 15 minutes of just the outer bands of this hurricane arriving, and the power lines, they came down immediately. The power went out in the hotel. And it's important for folks who are watching this unfold at home that we have not forgotten about Alabama and Georgia. They are in the path of this storm next. The hurricane is going to be moving very quickly, unlike what we saw in Florence. And there's a significant worry that the power could be out for days, if not weeks, where this hurricane is headed next, even when it's done with its damage right here in the Florida Panhandle, which is just extraordinary. I should mention, I know you shared it with viewers on the air earlier. Everybody here on the team is safe. Ginger Z, that's one thing I was really happy to see when I got out of that stairwell, George, is that she tweeted as well that she's safe. But we're all watching those images on social media the way you are too, and to see that home lifted off its foundation and carried with the storm surge not far from where we were, that's just a stunning sight to see unfold here this morning.
Historically powerful storm. Okay, David, I know we're going to see you tonight, a special edition of World News tonight from Panama City Beach. Our coverage is going to continue all day long online at abcnews.com. Hurricane Michael has made landfall, Category 4, 150-mile-an-hour winds. Have a good afternoon.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
We're about to find out on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
All right. It's safe. sort of box or something down there? Don't see it. Oh. Where those cushions are, sticking up to the left of that last cushion. It's kind of drifting out now. It'll be back in. Like a door panel or something. It's just kind of rolling around there with the cushion. We'll see in a second. Bobbing up and down. There it is. Oh man, that was a big shot. Flipped over. Oh, looks like two of them. Okay, cool. Okay. You could have mounted a camera on this banister. That's okay.
What I like to do with actual correspondence instead of
I know.
We're okay this morning. Somewhere 10 on that guy that was going on. This is terrible. Find out.
And this is why we use rental cars and not a person.
Why we get the full coverage?
No, I talked to Brooke, and she said don't get the coverage because our corporate insurance covers our rental. I've always been told away that I asked her by email, so I got it on record.
I'm also the memo that don't have staff. Funniest thing I ever saw was after Katrina, Old Park Hall. He had a really nice SUV. It was like a Gerald Lexus. No, it was like a luxury SUV. We parked it on the side of the public works building in Gulfport. It should have been soft, or should have been safe. The whole, every block, every window, sunk the roof in a foot or two. And there wasn't anything else available. So the park is driving on. After that.
Facebook Live has to be vertical. Yeah, look at this shit.
Should have been auto truck. I know.
I deleted my Facebook app. That and like,
To me, retirement is going to be getting rid of social media, getting rid of smartphones, and the flip phone.
Where do you want to stay in Alabama? Or?
I don't know. We're I'm from Atlanta, and so is my wife. We went to high school together. Like, I love the thought of going home. Every time I get over there and see the traffic and the cost of everything. He's actually talking about which would be great.
And I have my brothers and my brothers in federal style houses in Charleston.
They want me to move to Alabama. You know, it would be a lovely place to live.
Yeah, I mean, driven through.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. It's easy to you for honestly, you gotta make the money work. Down nice. She's 2 years.
Oh, yeah. You get right now on that.
Yeah. But she can get stuff and do that kind of stuff. No. But then I come down to this and like, although, you know that.
From Harvey is that 75% of the buildings that flooded in Harvey weren't in a flooding zone. Like I said, mind you, I live in a swamp. It's not a big swamp. When we were during Harvey, we were tail end escaping from down our house. My mother-in-law. I live in a little town called Weisenberg, and they live in a development, and the back end of it is a tributary off of Brazos. The Brazos is like way over, it was at least 20 foot above flood stage. And then all the tributaries were full, and then it started. My father-in-law's house is at like the highest lot until like Sanger Row subdivision, and the water just drowned until the driveway was flooded. And I said, Pop, we better go. I gotta work the story, but I don't want us to like be the story here. Let's move to a hotel. So yeah, so I told him, and he just my father-in-law is very smart. So he always knows things, right? And I'm like doubting Thomas. I was waiting like water to see the driveway. Yeah, if I don't have this car, you're not gonna have a car. I have a flood. We both hard out. Got us all out. Did the water get there? The water, like we marked in the property line when we left. It was about this far away from the back porch. And then when we got back, we saw like watermarks like right on the foundation. Because that's all I do. But we were going to buy the house next door to him because like the couple was selling it. How much like it? What's going to be going in the dark and I have to playing his house. This is perfect. This doesn't ever happen again. Pretty exciting. She said no. I got it. She said no.
Yeah, right now it's pretty much like it's the same. If I shoot it, it's the same race. But okay, cool. Man. Yeah, sometimes you're still that's when I was outside. And I went for it. I had just put my laptop. When I saw that, I was like, grab I'm on it right now, so I'll talk to you later.
એર બધી પછી જોડે પડી ગઈ બધી પછી અંદર એન્ડોર થાય પછી આખું બિલ્ડિંગ ઉડી જાય ભાઈ આખું બિલ્ડિંગ ઉડે પછી એર અંદર જવું નહીં એને નહીં પણ કરતા એ બની કરતા ફરી ફરી અંદર બની એર આવે જવું જોઈએ બહાર જવી જોઈએ રાડો Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to mess around.
This sure beats having lunch with Billy Nunez. Whew, that was fucking intense, dude. Yep. I want more. You know, it's like... Yeah.
Have you been up to our room? Is it okay?
It was okay when I went there. It was definitely going it's over this way. It's either behind the elevators. I think it's behind the elevators. That's what it is. We're gonna have like rain and the winds throughout the night, and if the winds are slowly dissipating, it's slowly We try to go outside and leave all the debris and all that.
Oh no,
Down here.
that's not even not in my mind right now. How much longer it's going to be kind of going stuff around like that?
It's gonna be a minute.
John, what do you think about going out there?
Yeah, give me another 5 minutes. Or do you want to go out now?
We need to see where.
Man, you know what I forgot?
Oh, you mean like, well, the wind's there
And then my eye protection. Hello. Like, what's scary? Because you got to get into it.
Maybe it's a little, maybe we'll wait a little bit. Still.
Gosh, is it Olsen? He was with us.
That's funny. He's a good shooter.
Great shooter.
They say Mexico Beach is underwater,
I think we can stay there. So we're gonna put it in the morning.
about ready to go out, okay? Maybe a little bit longer. Yeah.
We're not taking your crop.
Yeah, it might be a little leaky.
Well, mine would be something on the side of the white house. So, I don't know what. Yeah.
Like this one.
Yeah. Well, they have. They have.
Well, oh yeah, I'm sorry. Look at all these fucking trees. It's gonna be, this is all trash and shit. We're gonna be busy for a while.
Hey, my name's Joe. How are you? I was in front of you. It's just a weird problem.
See you later at the front desk there with the bridge.
She looked at it, she was
Her room stinks. She just walked into it.
That dude's a trip, man. The guy in his fucking motorcycle suit.
Yeah.
It's a little intense. He probably wears that every day. He probably goes to Walmart and that shit.
I was just checking the crowd.
Did you bring a beer now?
Yeah.
What is yours?
Okay, go ahead. Oh, that's yours.
Well, I have no cell phone service. I'm calling on Daryl Herbert. That's it.
I said something about I got beer in the room too, or something. I think like if you don't hand him one, he's fine. If you hand him one, he's fine.
You quit. Here's to Mike.
Mike?
To Mike.
Oh. Boy, this was, I've never seen one up close like this, but that kind of intense. That was fucking hardcore. Yeah.
I mean, I got hit with, we're still alive. The siding like peeled off and like dinging me right in the head.
Yeah, I saw that. I remember like some shit debris started flying.
Hey, what do you got?
Mexico Beach got cream, like Stuart keeps saying.
We're gonna have to probably. Not sure.
There's not as much at Mexico Beach. Can we get there?
There's video. There's video. There's some citizen-generated video. Shit, fucking buildings start flying. Roofs start flying.
What do you think happened?
I know, right. I know. But
cold water, like on the other side, like whatever that little subdivision is, like there's about this much.
Look at that. That's a whole piece of the building. That's a whole building there.
Yep. But guys, global warming doesn't exist.
It's a good thing. This would have been really bad otherwise.
Global warming doesn't exist.
Until every fucking denier's family members are killed by storms, then they'll maybe they'll.
You think maybe we can get out?
Wait, watch this one. This one looks like it's about to go.
My car is okay.
They put my car on the news channel.
Which one's yours?
Okay. Alexis?
When things calm down, I'll talk to you.
Your family own it? You own it?
Yeah, we're, I think IG is always kind of talking to the presidents, also police. I don't know what their procedures are. I can follow that because I'll be in trouble with IG. You know how to use white Cadillac? That's it. Oh, that's yours?
Nothing happened, right?
That's my pickup truck. The white Cadillac parked that way? Parked this way.
Yeah, the Lex
Parked this way.
Underneath the canopy, right?
Oh, no, different.
Mine underneath the canopy.
No, there's a white Cadillac, but my pickup truck got blown into the side of it. But it might not even be damaged.
Mine's white, but mine's
under the canopy.
Yeah.
This is impaled. Huh? Like it's impaled. Like there was a piece of plywood, like piece of plank just went through the window. Windshield. Yeah.
It just got done picking up. That's what it is. I get the need for. I keep telling her, don't pay your car off. Every time she does that, something's happening.
Yeah.
And I keep telling her, like, it's like, you want to pay off something?
That's all she said. But Lexuses have good resale value, so the insurance will probably pay for like at least a really good reason.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm probably thinking of getting some next month. Something, I don't know.
Funny one got a Maximum loves it.
That new one, right?
About it.
Yeah, that new one's pretty nice.
They're nice, but they're the most awful.
You know what looks nice? You know what looks really good? The Mazda 6.
Yeah,
those are nice.
Yeah, the new one looks really nice, and you can lease them for like $250.
Yeah.
A luxury car, for the phone.
CNN's saying 150 mile an hour ones.
Already?
155 miles an hour.
Yeah, it did not disappoint.
Nope.
That's the strongest. If the Jeep runs,
yeah.
So now, is it done now?
There's going to be more bands coming through.
But it's not going to let it go. It's going to be.
No, that's
I'm glad everybody's safe.
Yeah, really.
That's what people saying. I don't know how Bowser was going to be.
Good. That's what's all.
Is that the garbage there?
Yep. That went up just east of us. Right, how far are we from Mexico Beach?
Mexico, about 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
How many miles? 20.
Yeah, about 18.
I bet you it'll take 2 hours to go.
You won't be able to get down that far.
I don't think so.
You'd have to go up and down. You go up and down and around.
You probably have to take 22 feet wall, in other words, because if the bridge is closed, there is no way you can go.
Well, even then, the road's going to be covered with trees.
Yeah.
The road's going to be impassable.
How long I would say here?
You know,
As long as you save seconds.
You have to remove all this stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, eventually, when they say people are going to do cleanup, and we'll have to talk to people about starting over and getting their stuff and seeing what they're going to do.
that was a bad.
Now let me ask you this.
We're going to be busy. It's going to be a lot. I mean, what we see here is going to be
I'd say you'll be back to like looking okay in about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll take 3 years. Like halfway done. Something like this. This is like, what was the worst? Was Hugo really bad? Hugo was terrible. Yeah. Charleston. Yeah, Hugo, like, I'm sure it took Charleston at least 4 years before it was alright.
You know, it varies so much. Like New Orleans looks good now. From the creek to the Mississippi coast, it's still Henry Bill. No. Yeah, it just varies. There's a strong worth economy here as well.
Okay. I mean, maybe when we
It's hard to say.
when we get out, we can try to check. If we, I don't know if you can, if we're blocking the bank, we should try to check.
It does not like this. It's just like, I can't just go, oh my God. Look at how those trees are like not a leaf on them. And all these motherfuckers are all broken. All those ones over there, when we came out, when the eye came by, you saw those ones that had been swaying.
Well, the storm is over, so that's
they're all snapped, right? Yeah. So, you know, Mike said to shoot some before and after pictures, so I wasn't thinking about it, but I did make a frame of those trees swaying. Yeah. So I have to make a frame of them all busting. Yeah.
Well, you work for next year?
Yes.
Next time, I'm be out of town.
Like Ohio?
I don't know, somewhere. It was scared for a little bit. You know, when the front window, that right there got me.
Mike Stu.
I'm not worried about
Mike Stu was all up in my.
you know, like I told them, I wasn't gonna come here.
He was all up in my shit. He goes, dude, you took out full insurance, right? I'm like, yeah.
I'm like, dude, come on down one night here.
He went, you didn't? I'm like, Brooke Lansdowne specifically told me corporate covers that, don't take out insurance. Not to mention it's on the next door. And so, I can't wait to tell the people in New Orleans that they're in price. But he said Brooks Lansdowne specifically told me, you know, not to that our corporate insurance covers that. And I have it in email. And he goes, save that email. I'm like, fucking yeah. If
it was done last year, they should.
I don't have to save it, it's in the server. Even if I delete it. Yep.
My wife works at home today.
When's sundown? Like 6 or 7?
7. No, the time went back already, right? So probably about 6.
It's pretty fucking dark right now.
Yeah. If it dies down, like, do you have time to go nice?
I don't know. I mean,
you probably won't have a hard time passing the bridge.
Is there a bridge?
Oh, you have to take a halfway to go in there?
Not halfway. You got to take a 2-pond bridge.
Okay.
But the base is really strict about that.
About what?
Can you get to Mexico Beach from here without going over a bridge? Yeah, that's a long way to go, but my biggest thing, I can put you on that road, but going through this, I don't know how that road's going, because we got a bunch of trees and stuff, so I don't want you to get stuck somewhere where, you know, well, you can't take Highway 22 to Eyewall, because then you can make a right, and that right there, you can force the drill and put you on Mexico Beach. Usually you can tell the force.
Because it's going to be a while before they open up some bridges. They have to do structural integrity tests and all that. So it might be better just to go a long way down the streets. Hathaway Bridge will not be open.
But you would like to do stuff? I mean, shit.
Yeah, I like
Hey, me. Well, we thank you. What y'all save us.
Look at this fucking tree, man. It'll never be the same. Like,
yeah, y'all understand where that.
You think it'll ever stick that right again?
No, I think you're going to have to chop that down. What are those trees anyway? They're like a cypress?
I don't know what they are. That was a trip when that canopy came down.
Did you get that? It was on live TV.
From you?
From me. But the problem was
Yeah,
No, I think that's fair commentary. Like I do this for a living, so I care about it. I don't do it for the LOLs.
They probably don't have money. Well, first of all, one group is a nonprofit that collects, he said, that collects data, but that might address it for tax reasons. You know, they support it, and another one is like, we film this shit and we distribute it to news media. And we stayed in a good hotel though, because we got good action, like right out the fucking door.
I can write a story based on what happened here.
Yeah.
Welcome to the motel hell.
And that piece of wood going through the windshield right where the driver would be, like that would have killed the driver. Like it was, I didn't have to go find that. Yeah. I just had to step out to the front door of my hotel and go, boom.
Yeah.
Got it. I mean, that was a good pitch. Yeah. I mean,
well, they're using it.
Can you pull up our story?
The BNC
You have to
just
know that?
posted it.
Yeah.
I wonder what the story says at this point.
Oh look, someone had a better surf selfie than I did. Let's see. Florida Daily News. Fort Walton Beach. That's a nice frame. But Denny Pagan's like, you know, I'm tired of seeing pictures.
Yeah, I think we're oh, it's done. It's over. A little bit of rain in here.
All right,
My guy, they were able to get in touch with him.
Who's that?
They barricaded
Timothy Thomas, who I was talking to. Oh, yeah. I found him yesterday.
At the bar?
He looked like a homeless member of the
Super nice guy.
Real nice. He had like these obnoxious chihuahuas.
Did you meet his wife? I didn't meet her. I'm hoping that like the body in the bathtub or something. Because the reason I really didn't leave was because I was just hoping to float her out on the surfer with an alligator to get her.
Should we go for it because it's probably a hurricane, and it's just like, it's so weird. It shows you, maybe not the science of forecasting intensity is still weird. I mean, the track, the forecast the very intensity, they don't, they just get it. Oh, sheer. Sorry that they call that sheer. It's just like, we're just like, okay.
Bill Norman says,
It was like,
Bill, thank you.
I saw that on Facebook.
That's good. Pressure ever.
I got a fucking awesome picture of you, by the way. When we went out for the eye of the storm, and we started filming, and like the trees were just going, they were still on, and you're just going, it's like it's so AP rules.
Caleb Green.
You're like, what is he doing out there?
You should talk to my friend Caleb Green, who likes the body surfing. He's a Twitter handle at Florida Panhandle.
You're written. I went and opened that side door. I was filming Facebook Live. Fucking family. Don't open the door, close the door. And that's filming going, why you open the door? Close this. Oh, I'm like, oops, I'm in trouble. What? Do not open the door.
Yeah, I'm telling Lisa.
You got trouble. Have you been to your room?
Yeah. Well, we want to hang, so we deal.
I've got water has leaked in around the edges of the windows, but no broken glass. That's good.
The most powerful hurricane to hit the U.S. mainland in over 50 years. Because of the wind, 150 miles an hour.
kind of, interview's kind of something like this.
Teddy boy.
60 minutes.
Yeah, we just sit down on the chat.
I ordered for one of the Florida papers who I grew up and she's in Acapulco.
So you guys are asking.
Yeah, she's texting me to
you
shoot.
guys are asking me if we went through the eye.
Would it be one of the
So yes, so we all select questions.
No, just anything like that.
One you ask.
No.
Yeah, we actually, remember how like it was really crazy and then it kind of stopped right when it was like just a little and then it got crazy again. So yeah, so it's the radar and that's where we are. And you can see we just slipped it. And that's when it kind of calmed down a little. If we went to the middle of the eye, it would have been like sunny and quiet for an hour, but
Teddy.
it's a mess. And you guys are
From Miami, we live in our beach, so we moved to this area.
that's awesome. That was a smart move. What beach? What part?
Right now, I'm area.
Now, you guys might come up with a surprise. So this is a good issue for you guys.
Got it.
Center pass over here. On the left side of the beach, water. So you're not probably okay, but I think to the right, the center further down the road, more like Fort St. Joe and everything. That's the
So I think it's just the one line.
because they had the winds on the road.
I got a question too. Is that the bridge is really like water or halfway bridge?
I even think that would be a lot of water.
We heard that from a couple of people, but we ain't sure.
So you guys are from
Yeah, tell you what, I don't want
Andrew.
I'm happy. Things would be better served because I'm gonna do shit.
This city area, it was called Paris City.
When is this gonna go out?
So how did
Some of this, yeah.
you guys from
We have
Florida
time.
to do a live?
So I would probably just want you to talk for here. Because I don't want to, like, I don't want to foul.
Because even actually, we on the north part of Miami, that's damage more on the south part. So we go to the bed, we can take damages back.
Because we
actually seen it because they went to Trinity without power and stuff. Damage as much as without power for like a month or so. Yeah, it was yeah.
What happened?
I'm not sure. It was just without power. Wow. Like at least 3 weeks on work.
Seeing that like you just think, oh my God, that would drive me up with the end.
Yeah,
I had a what's it? It was like 8 houses down. Like I was in my grandma's house and like our whole, the carport, like in the middle carport, weed, like this 8 houses down, in our front yard.
They were filming us. I'm like, I don't really care. They can
Before
use it.
Katrina hit Mississippi, Louisiana, it actually hit Florida as a category 1, but actually had a little kick to it.
It's not worth it. I think you should come back inside.
You guys, I'm really glad you guys
I'm not, I can't really sign them.
It'll mess up all the restaurants. I want to eat right now, but
yeah, like once the adrenaline wears off.
Okay, cool. I'll do that.
It comes back.
Yeah.
I was in there now, so.
Yeah, I mean, I can't control it. That's not me.
We'll stay the other night and then probably go home tomorrow.
Okay.
See what I
That's a good idea. If it's a part of the program.
Okay. Probably go on the bridge now.
Wait, I'm Josh. I'm name's.
Give me a minute here.
So, yeah, so the show is called
This is something that we have to, this is like a
Big hurricanes all around the world. Like in the Philippines, typhoon is a hurricane. It's just what they call it. So yeah, this is that. Anyway, so yeah, so and I
Yeah, let me.
it's gonna play in the U.S. I'm not sure.
Like, I don't disrespect. I never signed my.
Yeah, but that really is I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you about this.
All right.
Sounds good.
Hey, Matt. Can you tell our friends here that we just didn't have
Yeah, well, no problem.
All right, I got it. Okay. Sort these guys out first.
Okay. So the waiver stand at what? At the access first?
Yeah, this is just to show that
the damn
wall you don't have to show.
Okay, so I wasn't.
It's just to show the wall.
I just did it. That way we can't sue y'all or nothing.
Lauren,
that way we can't sue y'all or nothing.
Well, actually,
I'm good. Sorry, I maybe talked to you a couple times before. You guys are on the 7 years then.
Yeah, we don't allow it.
I have a good place. There's a film crew that's I was doing my things. They're doing a documentary about the storm chaser. So, yeah, and like, there was I was filming when like overhang collapsed. They told me like, the guy that was brought back in there. It's scary. Like, it's not worth it. So, I don't really care. I think I said but I mean, this is while I'm having time with the film. Yeah, I'm going to give him your contact details at least and thank you. I'll give him your number.
There was pushed into the car. The wind, probably very strong for me, not as strong as here. So, what's that? What do we get? I can measure the wind, the official intensity of hurricane is 155. That's like top average. This is a very, this is a crazy.
benefit. It's like, I'm growing it everywhere else, but at least I got the good here. I was like, I'm trying to make it good down here.
I was in South Carolina the storm a couple weeks ago, and
Yeah, no, I'm all right. I just, the minute that happened, I went inside, and but things still got scary.
Let me get the bed up.
Yeah, I'm overwhelming wrong because she's not going to
Totally awesome.
You know what? I mean, we're gonna.
Have you heard from Mike? No. Did you chase Oh, yeah. Okay.
Is it a legal thing?
I never get carded and say, what are you doing now? They just basically, they have, powers to arrest people. Did you break the laws, but the curfew, the way that things stop, keep 95% of people right. And, they figure if you got business.
Turn it down. Somebody, a pilot, why not raise that?
That's the guy with the truck.
It's a life thing. So,
Jay's on the third floor.
So you're thinking it's not none of those. It's probably cable channel, BBC. Yeah, it's Dago's owned by UK TV, a few channels, and BBC Worldwide on it as well. If they can't. Well, yeah, this is probably a track to worse than
You pull forward, you get back.
the last 20 years. Yeah. Really? Now we're going through Irma and Harvey, but this is the combination for the wind. Harvey was terrible because the flood went over the big sea poles and it's all. And there's just so many low-lying areas. Exactly. It's just the terrain, isn't it? And the infrastructure to go to the houses to turning into it.
So you wrote out Jonas.
Yeah, go figure. I think you're not well, it's the man for that kind of thing. Trump's best friend. Yeah, so I'm totally. But a lot of them in British politics. I know Western Boris. Yeah, exactly. No, you still have Boris. It actually Boris looks like it. Just to work for us. He's a yeah. Right. You. Have you signed a call? I told him, okay, so I'm on the company down right now. So I called our PR and he's going to hash it out. I said I'm happy. I told her I'm like, can you use this? I'm like being concerned about that shit and tell him it's not worth it.
We lost him for a short time.
Yeah, if she, great, I'm like, you gotta, I mean, she can come back to me and say, okay, I don't want to.
I can understand that. Exactly. It's like, you're probably up there
but this is about, it's not controversial, like, this is about safety thing.
Shouldn't really be going out.
Yeah, most places we go, like we're in the Philippines, everyone
He's still wearing it.
I suppose that's why.
Yeah, mine, like, I forgot my helmet. I was in the rush to get here because this hurricane came. Yeah. So I had been that time with my helmet. I probably would have stayed up a little longer. Like a minute. But you know what?
You got hit.
I got dinged. It wasn't. It was just like a piece of another one. It's like a piece of like that, you know, that final tar siding, like the first peeled off. I'm like, I think it's not gonna. Yeah, it's gonna go worse. Josh.
I was just thinking, wondering about whether or not Josh caught something. There were some moments when he was outside.
Yeah, that was scary.
That was scary. You were outside.
Yeah, luckily I was behind it, I was in front of it.
Oh, I mean, it's the one.
Yeah.
Use that 10 minutes. All right, give it a go.
We're gonna go out survey. We were out on the city beach for an hour, and I was just like, hey, I don't know about you guys, but you guys can stay long. Good luck. It's burning down. It's hot. How do you go? I don't even know what it's like.
You're looking at getting air from the strap.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you were right on that. And it's like when that second half came, there's like so much, there's like dark. Yeah.
Oh, hey honey, Don't care about the camera, care about what's on it. I care about the footage. But actually, turned out cause like weather events, named weather events are.
Yeah, it's basically yeah.
So like the North Sea is not exactly warm.
No.
Yeah, no, like our actions are helping.
Yeah, no, it's over. It's like it's over. No, it's like you know, it's
Hurricane Michael making landfall on Mexico Beach, lashing the Florida Panhandle with 155-mile-per-hour winds. Oh! Michael, now the worst storm to slam this coastal area in a century.
You know,
Transformer Blue, are we still on? Are we on?
Knocking out power to our affiliate WMBB while they were live on the air providing wall-to-wall coverage. Hurricane Michael flooding streets in Apalachicola and sending debris flying as witnessed by our ABC teams spread across the region.
I just saw something I have never seen in real life. I saw an entire home taken off of its foundation and rolled down the street.
ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z seeking shelter inside her hotel in Mexico Beach where Michael made direct landfall.
My heart is racing. We just watched that happen in real time. And I'll tell you right now, it makes you shake.
It's gonna go, it's gonna go.
And David Muir's team on the ground in Panama City capturing structures collapsing right before their eyes. President Trump in Washington meeting with FEMA and emergency officials promising Florida any and all resources necessary as Michael roars inland, already leaving a path of destruction.
Nearly 400,000 Florida residents were ordered to evacuate, and those who did not, they're being told to shelter in place because right now, as you can see, it is just too dangerous even for first responders to answer any emergency calls. Elizabeth Herr, ABC News, Panama City Beach, Florida.
Hurricane Michael making landfall on Mexico Beach, lashing the Florida Panhandle with 155-mile-per-hour winds. Oh! Michael, now the worst storm to slam this coastal area in a century.
You know,
Transformer Blue, are we still on? Are we on?
Knocking out power to our affiliate WMBB while they were live on the air providing wall-to-wall coverage. Hurricane Michael flooding streets in Apalachicola and sending debris flying as witnessed by our ABC teams spread across the region.
I just saw something I have never seen in real life. I saw an entire home taken off of its foundation and rolled down the street.
ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z seeking shelter inside her hotel in Mexico Beach where Michael made direct landfall.
My heart is racing. We just watched that happen in real time. And I'll tell you right now, it makes you shake.
It's gonna go, it's gonna go.
And David Muir's team on the ground in Panama City capturing structures collapsing right before their eyes. President Trump in Washington meeting with FEMA and emergency officials promising Florida any and all resources necessary as Michael roars inland, already leaving a path of destruction.
Nearly 400,000 Florida residents were ordered to evacuate, and those who did not, they're being told to shelter in place because right now, as you can see, it is just too dangerous even for first responders to answer any emergency calls. Elizabeth Herr, ABC News, Panama City Beach, Florida.
Hurricane Michael making landfall on Mexico Beach, lashing the Florida Panhandle with 155-mile-per-hour winds. Michael, now the worst storm to slam this coastal area in a century.
You know,
Transformer blew. Are we still on? Are we on?
Knocking out power to our affiliate WMBB while they were live on the air providing wall-to-wall coverage. Hurricane Michael flooding streets in Apalachicola and sending debris flying as witnessed by our ABC teams spread across the region.
I just saw something I have never seen in real life. I saw an entire home taken off of its foundation and rolled down the street.
ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z seeking shelter inside her hotel in Mexico Beach where Michael made direct landfall.
My heart is racing. We just watched that happen in real time. And I'll tell you right now, it makes you shake.
It's gonna go, it's gonna go.
And David Muir's team on the ground in Panama City capturing structures collapsing right before their eyes. President Trump in Washington meeting with FEMA and emergency officials promising Florida any and all resources necessary as Michael roars inland, already leaving a path of destruction.
Nearly 400,000 Florida residents were ordered to evacuate, and those who did not, they're being told to shelter in place because right now, as you can see, it is just too dangerous even for first responders to answer any emergency calls. Elizabeth Herr, ABC News, Panama City Beach, Florida.
Hurricane Michael making landfall on Mexico Beach, lashing the Florida Panhandle with 155-mile-per-hour winds. Michael, now the worst storm to slam this coastal area in a century.
you know,
Transformer blew. Are we still on? Are we on?
Knocking out power to our affiliate WMBB while they were live on the air providing wall-to-wall coverage. Hurricane Michael flooding streets in Apalachicola and sending debris flying as witnessed by our ABC teams spread across the region.
I just saw something I have never seen in real life. I saw an entire home taken off of its foundation and rolled down the street.
ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z seeking shelter inside her hotel in Mexico Beach where Michael made direct landfall.
My heart is racing. We just watched that happen in real time. And I'll tell you right now, it makes you shake.
It's gonna go, it's gonna go.
And David Muir's team on the ground in Panama City capturing structures collapsing right before their eyes. President Trump in Washington meeting with FEMA and emergency officials promising Florida any and all resources necessary as Michael roars inland, already leaving a path of destruction.
Nearly 400,000 Florida residents were ordered to evacuate, and those who did not, they're